Today's a new day, let the old pass away. Gratitude blue sky. No more chains, no more masks. Time to make a change. No more holding myself back. The change begins in me. I'm answering the purpose call. Positive to push. Embracing life. I'm valuable in life. Today's a new day, a fresh taste of new grace. Gratitude don't sky high. No more lanes. Today's a new day, let the old pass away. Gratitude don't sky high. No more chains, no more lags. No more holding myself back.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to another episode of What's in Your Cup Conversations. Of course, I am your host, your favorite inspirational speaker, Consuela Nicole. And let me tell you, you are in for a roller coaster ride today. So before we get started, I need each and every one of you that is listening right now. If you're listening live, if you're listening to the replay, right now we are streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. If you have not shared any of the broadcasts as of yet, this is the one to share. I promise you today's episode is definitely the answer to someone's prayers. You have no idea what people are going through, or you may have an idea of what people are going through, but you may not know how to respond to them or how to answer. So we are going to give you a few moments to go ahead and share this link out, no matter which platform you are watching it on. If they're not on social media, text them the YouTube link. I appreciate each and every one of y'all for rocking with me this far. But guys, guess what? We are dead smack in the middle of holiday season, like for real, for real. And I know I was talking about Christmas decoration last week or 2 weeks ago. Y'all know what? I still didn't put that decoration up. It's sitting over there in the box. But I'm okay with that because my grandbaby said he was okay with it too, not putting up the decoration. So I'm okay with that. But he did make sure that I knew what he wanted for Christmas and his birthday, because his birthday and Christmas is like right next to each other. Why is he on a Sonic kick, y'all? Sonic the Hedgehog. So can you imagine now 6-year-old running around talking about he got speed like Sonic? Yeah, Nene was not happy, but he do act like he got the speed of Sonic. So we're going to keep it going. But you know what, guys? Because I'm excited about today's show. I really am, for a few different reasons. But I don't want to hold it up, right? I see you, Dr. Johnson, Miss Johnson over in Texas. I see you both. Thank you very much for chiming in and joining in. Good evening. Good evening. Make sure you are sharing out this broadcast. So let me tell you about the gentleman that I'm about to bring up right now, right? And I know you guys have been seeing the different posts and the different shares about Reborn, Resilient. So let me tell you about it. Our guest today is none other than Mr. Tiran Jackson. He is definitely a dynamic speaker, author, and visionary entrepreneur. And he isn't just a survivor, he's a thriver. Ooh, I love that. His own profound journey, marked by personal tragedy, loss, and triumphant resilience, is a testament to the human spirit's will to overcome. Starting his career as an engineer, Tiran was on the path to success, but life had other plans. Through transformational experiences, he discovered his true purpose, inspiring others to find their own path. Tiran's authenticity and vulnerability now serve as guiding lights for those seeking resilience, courage, and strength. Today, he doesn't just inspire, he empowers. Tiran's mission is to help you discover your authentic self, embrace your vulnerabilities, and set forth boldly toward your dreams. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, help me welcome to What's in Your Cup Conversations, Mr. Tiran Jackson.
What's going on,
Good.
Consuela? How's everybody doing? I hope you're doing great this evening. Hope everybody else
Man,
is going.
man, I have been waiting on this conversation with you for quite some time, sir. Um, you are out here shaking things up. You are shining the light on such what some people call a taboo conversation, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I kind of put it out there earlier a few days ago that some of the things we're going to be talking about in regards to reborn resilience, mindset shifting. We may touch on some depression, and of course, that survivors get or survivors mindset. Um, but I know I just talked about what's in your cup. Well, first of all, let me tell people, and I know you know because we've had a very extensive conversation about this, right? We're not just talking about what you're sipping on. Now, mind you, today I am sipping on water. It is water
I got
today,
mine right here too. I got a couple things, so I'm good.
right? But we're not talking about just that. We're talking about your mental, physical, and emotional cup, right? We are living in the times of what they call the counsel culture. When people don't understand something, they want to counsel you out and get rid of you or, discredit you, or they see the beginning of your story and where you are now, but they don't want to talk about or see the hills and the valleys and the mountains that you had to go through to get to where you are now. And Mr. Jackson, you got a story, like a for real story. But I just said what was in your cup. What do you see? How do you introduce yourself when people ask who is Tiran Jackson?
Well, I like to use the name of my business, Reborn Resilient, as the epitome of who I am. I am a
Okay.
man who went through a certain situation in time in his life, and as a result of a certain incident, we're going to talk about it. I ended
Mm-hmm.
up reborn, and that rebirth created it was the result of a transformation of who I once was to who I became. And if it wasn't for resiliency, I wouldn't be here today, because sometimes we have to learn what resiliency is. And I'm going to talk about resiliency in a couple of different ways, but we have to understand the first definition I want to give to it is that the struggles, the challenges, the obstacles, the setbacks that we have, they're all used to create a change. And this change is positive change. It's the catalyst to what creates that growth and transformation in our lives. So we go from who we are, who we once were, to who we become. And so when I talk about what's in my cup, I think about all the steps, all the pieces of transformation that happen. And like you said, you know, to be broken mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and be put back together. Look, that's a hard cup to glue
Is
back together and still be able to hold some things in. But
yeah.
the remarkable thing about it is that if you're taking the right steps and you're actually intentional in doing the work, you can heal from those agonies, those pains, but you can also in some ways become a better version of yourself than you already were. So
But
that's
you made us you said something that kind of caught my attention, right? You said you can piece or glue your cup back together, right? Is this, there are sometimes I don't know if gluing it back together, are there instances for you where you have to just throw the whole cup away and start over?
there are. That is a good way of looking at it too. Yeah, you might have to make your brand new cup. You might have to get you something else to sip out of or something. But you have to understand that change is what's necessary for you to get through some of those difficult situations. So being stagnant, being the same person as you always were, is not going to always be the key to moving forward in life. So
Okay. So I am going to share part of your story. Um, but before I do, I want to put it out there that you are first and foremost a man of God. You are a man of faith. You are a spouse. You are a father. You are, um, is it an alpha man? I think that's what I read, right? No, a kappa man.
say that again now. I'm Kappa. Yeah.
You're a Kappa man,
Yeah.
right?
Get it right.
So you're a Kappa man, a
Yep.
man of God, a man of faith, a spouse, a father, a brother, a son. But all of this together makes you who you are, correct?
Right. Correct.
Okay. So
That is
I'm
part
gonna
of me.
share your story, and then I'm gonna turn the platform over because I know I have questions,
Okay.
and I know the audience is gonna have some questions. So we're gonna share this. We I'm about to roll this. This is the beginning
Yeah, we
of
can go ahead
Mr.
and do
Jackson
that.
started. Okay.
They met nearly 2 decades ago while in college at Tennessee State University. She was an AKA with a megawatt smile, a beautiful heart, and a magnetic personality. He, a Kappa, a humble guy with a sweet soul who prided himself on his study habits. They fell in love immediately after meeting at a party. They married 2 years later and had a son, Cameron. Their friends and family described their marriage as the perfect union between two strong, smart, and God-fearing people. Tiran and Malika Jackson were undeniably the envy of most couples.
Tonight, authorities in the Bahamas investigating what caused this popular tour boat to explode, killing one American woman and injuring at least 9 others, leaving behind this incinerated floating shell.
But on June 30th, Malika died while the two were celebrating their 15th wedding anniversary while vacationing in the Bahamas. She was 39. These are pictures of the duo taken the day before tragedy struck. They were enjoying a romantic getaway when the engine of the tour boat they were on suddenly exploded off the coast of Exuma. 10 American tourists were on board the 40-foot chartered boat at the time of the incident. Tiran lost his leg, broke his collarbone, and fractured his pelvis and spine, suffered second-degree burns, and had his left shoulder dislocated. Malika, who was sitting where the engine exploded, was killed. And now Tiran, whose doctors say is a walking miracle, is forced to be a single father. And while his wife is gone, these pictures, memories, their son, are all reminders of the love that was and will forever live inside of his soul.
So, Mr. Jackson, first and foremost, I think this was the first. Stop it. This was the first time I think that I've watched that video where the tears didn't just start flowing. I was able to control them, probably because I'm on camera.
Yeah.
But that was that the beginning of a complete life change?
Yes, that is, you talk about a life-altering experience and something that'll trigger transformation. Leading up to that point, and this was in 2018. This was 6 years ago. As you know, you heard Malika and I, we were celebrating our 15th anniversary, but life was great. Life was wonderful. We had a strong marriage. We both were moving forward in our careers. I was an engineering manager. I thought I was going to be an engineer the rest of my life. She was a director of HR and DE&I for a big company, and she had just gotten promoted to director right before we were taking this trip. So we had things rolling together in our life. Our son was in a good place, and we thought we were just going to have the time of our lives. I thought my purpose was really just to take care and provide for my family, and so it's crazy how things just all of a sudden change, and you can leave you looking in a different direction on how you're going to move forward. We had a strong connection, a strong bond, but we were really looking forward to those what were supposed to be 5 days in the Bahamas to really be able to get away from everything that was going on and truly, reconnect and connect even stronger and even look ahead to what the next 15 years were going to be like and the 15 after that and so on. So we were dreaming about the rest of our life together. The first 2 days there were great. We had us a wonderful time. Time at the beach, fruity drinks, time at the pool, all the good things that you do on vacation. And we didn't think anything of it when we decided we were going to leave our all-inclusive resort and book that excursion that day. And we woke up that morning and we got to the edge of the resort where a bus was picking us up. And as Malika and I were there, we started talking about what we were going to do for that day. And as you saw, there were two boats that were right there.
Mhm.
One of them was doing a full day, an 8-hour tour, and the other one doing a 4-hour tour. While Malika and I were talking and trying to figure out what we wanted to do, I said, how about we do the half-day tour? I wanted to go back and go golfing at the resort that afternoon, and I was thinking about the time that we had there still and thinking it'd be a good time to do that. And she was cool. She was like, we'll spend the time out there, on the boat, the excursion, and taking us to go swim with some pigs and do some other, that was the big attraction. But she was like, I'll go to the spa back at the resort then. And so, we kind of thought we were going to try to fit all of these things in while we were there on that vacation. And by cutting that trip to the shorter 4-hour trip, it was going to, help us get more in. But, it's amazing how when you make decisions and you look back on it and you say, man, I wish I would have, should have made the other choice, how much more different life would be.
That
If we
woulda,
would have
shoulda.
Yep. And for a long time, and as we started getting into, we talk about mental health, grief, survivor's remorse, that guilt, that was heavy on your boy. It was heavy on me for some time because it was one of those things where I always questioned, why did I have to say, let's do this trip? Why did I say, or why did we come to the decision to go on that particular day? And for all the reasons that you can, ask yourself in your mind as to why, and trust me, I had some battles with God trying to understand why this had to happen to us. But
Right.
ultimately, I had to come to a place of peace and knowing that, everything works out in his plan, and all things work together for the good of those who are called to his purpose and who love the Lord. And I struggled with that for some time because these type of things shouldn't happen to good people. And
You're
so,
right. You're right.
yeah, that was a very, very difficult point that I had to come to realization of as I was coming to grips with the fact that at the end of it, I was still going to be here and Malika was gone. And so
But
yeah,
I guess my other question, or one of many questions, is now you're going through this entire life altering state mentally, right? And we're going
Mhm.
to the physical part, but you have to guide a young boy through this same tragedy.
Yep, yep,
So now, and I know in the video mentioned that you actually lost a limb. So
yep,
now you have to figure out your life and guide the life of a young boy to now missing his mom and his dad looking different. What
yep.
was that like?
So if you go through a physical change or accident, that's a trauma in its own right.
Yeah.
And I had to adjust to just understanding that physically I was always going to be different. That in its own is a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
Losing your wife, losing your spouse, your person, your partner, your best friend, your lover, the mother of your child, all of that. That right there is traumatic and a huge thing to have to try to deal with and overcome in its own right. Realizing
Mm-hmm.
that you're having to, be there for a 12, 13-year-old son who that's the only woman who he's ever been close to. And not knowing how I was going to be able to father and parent him when I had questions on if I was even going to make it. All of this was, I say that to say each one of these is its own traumatic element, yet I had to deal with it all at once. And then on top of it, too, and this is another layer to it. So, this was international news. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
who knew Malika, who knew me, saw it or knew about it or reached out or tried to do something. And then in much of a way, when you're in that state of grieving, it was overwhelming trying to not have to have everybody input while I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to move forward with life. So that was a lot too at the same time. And so so it was out. Look, the first 3, 4, 5 months were just, they hurt. It was hard. It was extremely hard. I definitely was suffering from loss of confidence, heartbroken. I didn't know. This was the first time I've had to deal with a this type of tragedy before. And you know, you think about things where you now I've lost a person I was planning to spend the rest of my life with, taken away from me. I didn't get any warning. I didn't get any insight. So it was just all of a sudden she was snatched away from me. Here I am having to, I don't even know if I'm going to walk again for a period of time with the prosthetic. I'm literally broken right foot, 3rd-degree burns on my right leg. I had a fractured pelvis, fractured vertebrae, bruised ribs, broken collarbone. And yeah, they ended up having to take my left leg below the knee. And so, you know, when you're in a hospital bed and you're just struggling to survive, I literally remember laying in there, and one of the things they did while this was the day after the accident happened, well, the day of the accident happening, they tried to reattach what was left of my left foot to my leg. When I woke up on that boat and glanced down, I could see my ankle bone. I could see blood rushing out, and my foot had gotten infected. They tried to pin my foot together. That infection started going through my body. And as I was in the hospital, I could see the EKG monitor over my head, and over the matter of 3 hours, I saw my vital signs all go from green to yellow to red. And this is already after having to realize the fact that my wife was no longer here, that she died. And so at that point, the vulnerability started to kick in, the true despair started to kick in, because I realized I was dying too. And earlier that day, I had to call my son and tell him that his mom was never coming home. All of this in a short amount of time, and just, you know, it's not easy to bounce back from it. But this was what the reality of it was. So when you asked me what was I feeling, what was I thinking during this period of time, I was initially, when it happened, I thought all hope was lost. I thought it was only a matter of time before I was going to die, and I must be meant to go as well. That there was something in my life that I had done that was a mistake that warranted this type of pain. Now I fast forward a little bit. After 2 days, they got me out of the hospital in the Bahamas and got me into a level 1 trauma center in Florida. And that's where they amputated my leg. And I went through 9 surgeries in 5 days. One day I had to go through 5 surgeries. And when I came out of that, I was still in ICU, but God was speaking to me finally. And what he told me when I was in there, and I was, you know, mad, I was hurt, I was scared, I was shocked. He told me there are a couple of things that were the reality here. One, he told me I had to accept that it was Malika's time to come home. And that the sooner I got to accepting that, the better off the rest of my life I was going to be. He told me if he wanted, he could have taken my life 3 different times. Could have taken my life when that boat exploded. He could have taken my life when I was in the Bahamas and I saw my vital signs go from green to red. And he also could have taken my life when I went through those 5 surgeries in one day and I was still unstable. But he was keeping me here for a reason and a purpose. And that purpose was greater than anything I could understand. He told me I wasn't going to go back to that life of being an engineer, that was not where I was meant to be, that there was a different path for me and I needed to be obedient if I wanted to understand and go down this journey, even though I didn't know what that was, but I needed to understand that I wasn't going to go back to what I was. He also told me this: be resilient, be resilient. You've overcome just to still be alive at this point are nothing compared to the obstacles you're going to have to face as you move forward. But it was when we talk about the shift, that was the start of the change. He said that you have 2 options. You can either feel sorry for yourself and be a victim and seek pity and struggle to survive, or you can make a conscious choice to choose to be resilient and live a life where you thrive. And so even though I was in a broken state right there, it was the moment in which mentally, emotionally, spiritually, I knew something was going to have to come out of me that never had before. And so that was the start. Even though now don't get me wrong, I still went through the depression. I still went through the heartache. I still went through the anxiety of what was to come. I still had those moments. I had PTSD for a while because, waking up on that boat was traumatic in its own right. But it was part, when we talk about the roller coaster, when I was in the low points and the low times and was struggling, one of the was that got me back up was this message that he had told me to choose to be resilient and to keep pushing and to keep fighting and to be able to use what I'm going through for something better. And like I said, at the time I didn't know it, but that will Jeremiah 29:11. I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope in the future. Right. I was struggling with understanding where I had, because I was hopeless, and then what my future was going to look like. But after I got over being mad at God for a bit, it started to resonate that I needed to, follow this plan he's going to have for me and move forward in life, even though, like I said, I didn't know what it was at that time. So yeah,
right. So we're gonna talk about that, right? And I'm gonna let you do what you do, because, and I know it's probably not gonna show up the way I want it to, but we're gonna make this work anyhow. How did you get from, what did that look like to go from one to the other? Like what did you dump out? Well, we know what was dumped out of your cup. But what steps did you take to refill your cup and to be where you are now? Because if you would not have told me and I went and looked for myself, sir, I would not have known you had a prosthetic leg. Right? I done seen videos of you running track, you on the basketball court, you still doing all the things, right? You still doing all the things. So what steps did you take? And we know everything is going to be a little different for everybody, but the foundation, what was the foundation that you had that took you from one to where you are now, right? That the people can kind of hone in on, because everybody, like you said, you had several traumatic incidents rolled into one that you had to deal with for yourself. Then you had to figure out how to get your son through it. And, with everybody and everything coming at you from many different, I call them octopus arms, right? From many different angles and everywhere. What does building and being reborn with resilience look like? What can you talk to me? What talk to us? Talk to us.
So I share this when I give talks. My roadmap to resilience. It's easy to look back on, or easier to look back and say these were the things. But really, what I want to talk about, and just to give it, that's an acronym for restoration, having an obsession, a laser-like focus towards something. The A is for acceptance. Denial is the enemy of acceptance. And until we can actually put that behind us and accept our reality, we can move forward. The D is for making the right decisions and understand the power of those decisions to choose. M is for motivation. The A is for having the right attitude. The P is for a process. There's a process to get you from where you are to where you want to go. And anyway, I say all of that now. It's easy to look back and say that. But when I go into what I was having to do, I had to understand that there were certain things that I had to make a priority. And this gets to the obsession piece of it. For the first couple of actually 6 to 8 weeks after I got out of the hospital, I had to focus on one, the physical therapy that they had me doing, because I knew I had to get back to a place where I was going to be able to physically be with my son, and that it was going to be important for me to be able to heal and be able to get out of that state of where you saw me in that wheelchair to where I was able to walk by his side, to be able to go to his football games, to be able to do all of those things. So I had to block out a lot of different aspects of what was coming at me for a period of time for me to start the physical healing process. The emotional healing process came a little bit afterwards. Well, I'll say a little bit afterwards, But while I was in that state, I had a lot of time to myself where I was reading and I was writing, and I started writing my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions out in a journal. And the power of that, and I'm not a writer, I didn't think anything of it, but it was my way of initially coping with the fact of Malika being gone. I think strategically it had me writing out things about, well, how am I going to be able to move forward when I get back around my son? Because for a period of time he was not, he stayed with family while I was physically trying to recover. It actually helped me out some, and partly I didn't want him to see me in that broken state all the time physically, because he had this vision of his dad being strong and put together, and you see me in that
It's
picture, I
superhero.
wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to limit that to some extent, but we did talk all the time. But once I was able to at least get to a place where I could move on crutches and I could, move a little bit, then became the real emotional and mental piece. We had to do a lot of grief counseling. We had to be able to open up about how we felt about losing Malika. Not just me from losing my wife, but him losing his mom. I talk about this when I talk about acceptance. For a long time, it was hard for him or I say it this way, he was in denial of the fact that his mom was no longer here. But when she was still here, she would have to travel for work for a week, and it would just be Cam and I. And then and vice versa. When she would come back, I would have to travel at times. But in his mind, for a long time, it was like mom has just gone on a long work trip and she just hasn't come back yet. And so that's the way he
Right.
it and all. But in the reality of it is, we had to get to a place of counseling. The right support made a big difference in accelerating that healing process. It allowed us to open up. For me, I wasn't used to having to voice my opinion, my express my feelings. But as I was going through this, I realized I couldn't get through it. I was going crazy. I was having emotional breakdowns, and I didn't know how to deal with the emotional ups and downs. So I needed that therapy and that counseling. And what it did is it helped show me how to be more authentic, more vulnerable, and allow me to open up and start the rediscovery of who I was. And that's where part of the transformation truly came in, because I had to realize that the person who I was, and this happens when you get married or you're with somebody for a long time, you start to like to do what y'all like to do, and your personalities and the things you start to lose some of what your individuality there. Well, I had done that for what happened to be 17 years while Malika and I were together. And so I was used to that, and all of a sudden she's taken away from me. And now I'm out here, 40-year-old man having to figure out who I am at this point now. And I don't have my partner with me anymore. But what I learned was that some of the things that I thought I liked, I didn't. Some of the things that I've been curious about, I needed to explore. These were some of the ways for me to learn more about what drove my ambitions, what actually invigorated me at this point in life, as opposed to what I had been or who I was before. And so that's where, realizing that I never thought I'd be a speaker. I never thought I'd be doing anything like that. That wasn't who I was. That was not anything related to what I was used to. You throw me a thermodynamics problem in front of me. Like I said, I was an engineer. That was what I was good at doing. And now I'm having to tap into other parts of me that had never really been tapped into before. But what I realized was I found joy in being able to help people. But I didn't know that initially. I just needed to find other things to help me expand and figure out who I was and what I like to do. And I think that was part of me. And then just being willing to, not lie to myself, keep it real. When I was hurting, to say that. A lot of times, Black men, we try to, be hard. We try to hold everything in. We keep the traumas and we deal with everybody else's stuff. And I'm straight. Nah. I realized I couldn't do that because I was was crying. I was constantly sad. I realized normally a pretty emotionally stable person, I was popping off on people and doing things that were just, but it was a result of not knowing how to cope with that level of emotional trauma. And once I started learning how to do it, it became easier for me to manage my emotions and understand that, it is okay for me to talk about and need some help and go get it. So anyway, that was part of the journey right there. Getting past the grief, getting past the survivor's remorse, getting past or the survivor's remorse there,
Right.
and
Right.
understanding that, that I still had a life that I had to live, and Malika, she would have wanted me to keep moving forward, made it easier for me to say, okay, let me go ahead and take life by the horns and continue to push. So
And do it. Yeah. So let me ask you this, because you touched on something that is definitely needed. If you can take a second and go back and talk to not well the black men, talk to the men, right, about the mental health aspect and speaking up or reaching out, because you actually have a few different programs that work across the board for men and women, but you specifically have something for men, right,
yeah,
like a safe space. Let's talk
yeah,
about that, because there are a lot of men out there struggling right now, and they don't know where to go without being judged, without, because they have that stigma on them that they got to have that
yeah.
S on their chest. Talk to our men for a minute, and our young boys that's coming up under that same, stigma. What can you give them? And of course, where can they go?
Yeah.
How can
Yeah,
you help them?
definitely.
That up
So,
there too.
so,
Go ahead.
so one of the things that I think is a major issue for Black men, a lot of us suffer from depression, and I would even lean towards severe depression and don't even realize it. I think that sometimes that sadness, that hurt that we hold in, is only breaking us down from the inside. And you see this more and more as you get people who are, and when you see men having heart attacks in their 40s, you
Mhm.
know, good health, but there are internal stresses that are really that they're dealing with. And part of getting past this is being able to, express your emotions to right people that understand what you're going through. Now, one of the things that I do, I'm a certified life coach now. I help people get past those pains that they have and really redesign. We take on so many burdens, some of them deservedly, and some of them we probably shouldn't be taking on, but we don't know how to express how we're feeling throughout that. So what I do is, with some of my talks and with some of what I do with my coaching, is I make it a safe space for men to be able to at least share what they're not expressing to others. And one of the best things, and I've got a group of guys who I do this with, um, we don't didn't know each other from before. I'm not in their day-to-day life, but sometimes having that person who can understand that is not, you know, so integral into what you're doing, or in tune with your family, it gives you that outlet, that safe space to be comfortable with sharing, knowing it's not going to come back on, what you gotta, the people you're gonna see tomorrow and everything. And I think
Mhm.
that that's one of the best things when we find someone who we can trust and understand, and also have that dialogue, because I'm the first one to tell people, look, brothers, I've been there before. I went from being somebody who, I grew up in Alabama, where I grew up. If you saw a therapist, that meant you was crazy, and
Right.
or something wrong with you, and so that was the stigma. That is part of the stigma that goes with it. But at the end of it, part of it is about just understanding that this is actually what's going to help me get through things. It's going to help me be stronger. Expressing and being in tune with your mental health, it helps you. It's like going to the gym. You hear this, but the more that you are operating and expressing your feelings and understanding how you really feel, and not
Mhm.
putting up that facade of I'm all right, I'm okay, when you know that everything is breaking you down on the inside, the better
Right.
off you're going to be with being able to say, okay, I maybe I shouldn't go out on this day because I'm not feeling myself. Maybe I shouldn't hang around these people because they have negative energy and I don't need to get that into me. The more aware that you are of your situation and understanding. But it does seem like more men need to go ahead and take that step forward. And one of the things that I did, and I know you put it up there earlier, one of my books that I wrote afterwards, it's called Widowhood is for Women, Men Just Remarry. And for those men who are widowers who have lost their spouse and try to figure out how to get back out there and live life again, and all of the other thoughts and misconceptions that may be out there, this is something for them because, you know, it's a lot of things that, you know, women in some ways they get consoled more, and you have people who are around them a lot longer after they have the loss of theirs, you know, and everybody worried about the kids and everything. Guys, a lot of times after the, you know, funeral, after a week or two, you know, you're forgotten about, and then it's
Right.
like, okay, but ultimately there are a lot of other battles that we as men have on how we're going to proceed with life. Not even getting into relationships or dating or anything like that, but we are more prone to do that quicker. So in that book, there is a number of different things that are highlighted that helps point out, you know, if you're going through this, you're going to have this grief and this hurt 1 minute, and then you're going to have this desire to, you know, try to get back out there, but you're going to know that you hadn't healed enough yet. And so these are some of the things that we touch on in this book, but it's a good guide for those who are trying to find themselves after dealing with the loss of a spouse from a male perspective. But this is just one of the areas. I think there are so many other pieces for when I talk about dealing with anxiety, that stress that comes along with that. A lot of guys are struggling with burnout from doing something to the point where it is really, you know, eating them up from the inside. And so that's really where I like to start the conversation with the guys, because, you know, it's one thing to ask somebody how they're doing and getting a cliche answer, but it's another when you start digging into it and ask them, you know, how are they feeling,
Pulling
and
back the layers.
yep. And I think, like I said, my goal is to put my stuff out there so others can feel open to it. And when I speak and when I work with people, you see the wall start to come down. And I think that's a beautiful thing because, you know, I can relate to a lot of the pain that people face, you know, as a result of my experience and what I've walked through. So
Okay.
yes.
So tell us about the other book, Choosing Resilience.
So Choosing Resilience, that is my flagship book. That is the book where I actually, it goes into my story of recovery. Part of it is about moments in my life where I was building resilience before then and didn't even realize it. For instance, I tell this story about how when I was in my early 30s, I thought I could play a little basketball back in the day and everything. So in my early 30s, I went to the gym one night, had me a good leg workout. I saw some young cats playing on the basketball court. Thought, okay, I feel good. I'm gonna get out there with them. Started playing, and before I knew it, I found myself on the ground, and I didn't realize it right away, but I tore my Achilles. And so I had to go through a surgery, and I had to go through 9 months of rehab just to get back to a place where I could jog and move again. And so, and Malika told me, boy, you don't need to be getting up back out on that basketball court again. So said no, I wouldn't and all, but you know, some of us are hard headed. Invited me to play in this 35 and up league. And I'm thinking, okay, people more my speed and everything, not the risk of getting hurt. First game out there, go to the basket. I tear my ACL, my PCL, and my patella tendon in my left knee. 9 months of surgery again, having to go through, I had to go through physical therapy, had to go through all of this stuff. But but what it did was it prepared me because listen, when I had to realize I had to go through this whole thing to learn how to walk again, I had experienced mentally what I was going to have to go through and physically some of the process and the pain to know that I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to give up when I go through this, even though it's different. You know, I'm having to wear a prosthetic leg and I'm having to do something. This doesn't feel natural. This doesn't feel normal. And I got all kind of pain and just different sensations in what's left of my leg. But if I hadn't gone through those other things, my will and my focus to keep going would not have been the same. So it's just things like that you don't appreciate the pain and the struggle as you're going through it, but in some ways it's preparing you for what you're going to have to face down the road. And that was part of, you know, that resilience, understanding that it was going to get me out that process. That's right, Roy. And so that was part of the process. And, you know, from that point, there were little boundaries. I started running 5Ks. I started running 10Ks with the prosthetic leg. I learned how to swim with one leg. These are little things that were able to keep, keep me thinking that I was doing things other people might say, oh, you can't do that. But I was realizing that as you start to get small wins, you develop more and more confidence, more and more belief.
Oh, amen.
You feel like you can do that you thought you couldn't do, or people say you can't do. You get more compelled to do those things. And that's what it was. So as I was going through my recovery, those little victories kept pushing me to go harder, go further. And so I think that's part of it. And that's part of how I built how the resilient mentality, that mindset comes to be, by being able to take the setbacks and be able to make something great out of it. So
Okay. It looked like you have a question. Tiffany, what's your question? Make it quick, but what's your question? We're gonna see what we have. You are a true picture of what it means to live life with no more limits, because you are pushing forward and you're pushing strong with something that would have completely broken and destroyed, you know, someone else, right? Someone who didn't have a strong foundation already, right? We could be talking about them instead of with them, right? But one of the things that, you know, that stands out with you is that you had a faith-based foundation first and foremost. And you was transparent and said you was mad with God, you know. What did that look like for you? You know, so let's talk to the church folks for a minute, right?
Okay.
It's okay to be mad with God. We just not gonna stay there. So what did that look like for you? Okay, I'm mad at you right now, but you had to get to that point to, okay, I still trust you. I don't understand it all. What because you know Christians are quick to say, did you pray about it? But that's all they're gonna come up with. What did that,
we gotta,
what did that look like for you?
well, it looks like some of what I said, because when it comes to it, I think that we go to church. Faith without works is dead. You can pray about it, but you got to be about that work, but be about that action. And so God was telling me, even though I was mad, I was upset, like I said, the word kept coming back to me, as I had a lot of time initially to myself and to pray, and because I was concerned about what the future was going to be like. I didn't know if I walk again. I didn't know what my son was going to be like. I didn't know. I knew I was going to survive. I knew I was going to live, but I was thinking that my life was going to be horrible. But God kept telling me after the fact, I got something bigger for you. I got something different for you. And, you know, it wasn't clear to me at that point in time, but I also had to rely on those who could give me some spiritual advice to help pull me out. We're gonna talk about people. We're gonna talk about the filtration of your friends, family, and followers. Everybody who is around you is not gonna be the ones who gonna support you. But I will say this: one of the closest people to me, as I was going through this, was actually my father-in-law, Malika's dad. He's a pastor, and he and I would have some real spiritual conversations, I and Cameron, about how to move on past the loss, and how there's a gift and a treasure with the memories that we had of Malika, but knowing that, you know, she was always going to be a part of us. And this made it a little bit easier and put me at peace. I'm going to tell you something that's a little funny, but when I think about how God works, in some ways, I talk about this situation that I had. It was about a year before Malika and I went on this trip. And what Malik and I were doing, we were watching the movie downstairs in our basement. And in the movie, the main character, and Malika, she thought about it for a second, and she said, "Ty, if something were to happen to me, I wouldn't want you to mourn and grieve for too long." She told me she wanted me to go back out there and find happiness again. And then after that, she thought about it for a second, and she came up with this list. And on this list were the names of 7 women that she said, under no circumstances whatsoever should they be around our child, be bringing me casseroles, be around. She said, "Them ain't my real friends. They better not be after you." But then the last thing that she said was that, "I want you to do everything to make sure that the only part of me that's still left on this earth is well taken care of," and that's our son Cameron. And so,
Right.
where I'm going with that is, in God, something that seemed like an insignificant conversation at the time, God put that there. So as I was trying to go through my healing and grieving process, it reminded me, one, that I had her blessing to move forward, and two, that she was with me, and then three, that it was my responsibility to do everything I could to make sure that our son was taken care of. And that gave me the motivation, the desire to get out of bed when I didn't want to go to physical therapy, the desire to go to counseling when I needed to go and didn't feel emotionally ready for it. But these were the little things that were, you don't think about it at the time, but they actually make a big difference in your mindset, your perspective, and the way that you get past the challenges that you face in your life.
The next one. Okay. Well, Tyran, I have enjoyed all of this and some. We definitely have to do a follow up, but matter of fact, I need to
We
be
can
at one
get
of your
dark.
conferences.
Yeah.
I do. But you have quite a few things on your calendar finishing off the year and starting the new year, right?
Yeah.
Are you able to talk about like one or two that should definitely
So
people
yeah,
should hone in on?
yeah. So two things I want to really talk about. I have this happily ever interrupted resilience restoration event that's going on in Atlanta. It's actually going to happen February the 8th and 9th, I believe, uh, coming up early next year. I speak for corporate companies all over the Southeast, all over the country, really. And I got a lot of different things in January and February. But I am having a larger event in Atlanta, actually April the 12th and 13th too. But before then, if you go to rebornresilient.com, that's where you'll see all the stuff that I've got going on, all of my events. You're going to see more about my coaching programs where I help people. I not only help people who are going through, the loss of a close loved one, but for anybody who feels paralyzed and stuck and not really fulfilling and reaching their fullest potential, how to be able to get that mindset shift, be able to build resilience to overcome the obstacles and redesign your life in the way that you dream of it. All of this was part of what I had to go through, what I've learned, and a lot of it, despite the level of trauma may not be the same, those things still hold us back, and it's still a process to be able to move forward and overcome those things and really get to the life of our dreams. So visit rebornresilient.com. Feel free to look me up, Tiran Jackson or Tiran Jackson Official on Instagram or anywhere else. And look, just we can have a conversation. I've realized that part of what I'm here to do is to help those who are going through trauma, tragedy, or transition to make the transformation so they can be triumphant. And so the transformation that I've gone through is amazing. But look, I'm not alone. There are so many others who are ready for their breakthrough. And let's bust it down and make it happen. Yep.
Amen. And I appreciate your transparency, and your testimony is definitely the answer to so many people's prayers right now. Before I let you go, two questions. Well, one question, then a statement.
Okay.
And this is something I ask all of my guests, right? So if you watch the last few episodes, you may have heard this, right? What does it mean to you to live a life with no more limits while being beautifully flawed?
What does it mean to live a life with no more limits while being beautifully flawed? Well, so I'm going to pull out one of my most powerful statements that I tell people, and I tell it about resilience. Resilience is not about regaining what was lost, but reshaping what still remains. And it's what we do with what still remains that dictates the narrative of our life story. Don't worry about what was still in the past. We got to worry about how we're going to deal with circumstances where they are now. And for me, what it looks like is I am going to be one of the happiest handicapped amputees out there, inspiring, giving hope, and changing the world and making people feel better about overcoming whatever obstacles they find in their path. So that's what it looks like to me. And I just hope to aspire to continue doing that and doing it on higher levels and impacting more people.
Yes, absolutely. So on that note, let me tell y'all,
I got you, Roy.
I am excited. Yeah, y'all need to catch up, like for real. But I want to thank Tiran Jackson for joining us on. This is not the end of the season. This is the end of 2024, the last show before Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, and the new year, right? And I wanted to end the year with Tiran because of his story and the words that he have to get you through the depression, no matter if it's winter depression, seasonal, whatever the reason if you're depression, right? Because I was one of those. Winter depression, we was here, right? Until about a year ago. So I know that one all too well. And I know a lot of people on my timeline is dealing with survivors, grief and losing spouses and things of that nature. So it was really important for me and the show to have you here today. But I need y'all to understand one thing, y'all. We're not coming back in 2 weeks. We coming back in 3 weeks. And we coming back with a flip. We're coming back with some special things because it's going to be the 1-year anniversary, y'all, of What's in Your Cup Conversations. So Tiran Jackson, thank you for joining us to round out the 2024 of What's in Your Cup Conversations. I will see everybody in 3 weeks on January 8th for something special. But remember, we would rather talk with you before we talk about you. If you don't want to talk to me, reach out to Tiran. Because, baby, we only touched the nugget of what he got going on in his stories. Because if you go follow the man, go follow him on all social media platforms. He has something every day to lift your spirits and to get you through what you're going through. No matter what you're going through in life, also remember, it's okay to pause, pivot, and push when you're ready. Until next time, everybody, have a great day and a happy holiday. Yeah.